Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to be reacting to Iman Gadzhi and breaking down the persuasion, psychology, and marketing tactics that he uses when he's trying to influence you in his videos. Now, this is a highly requested video. Each week, I release a community poll for you guys to vote on to see what influencer I cover next week. And then I go into videos of them, I break down the psychology they use, the persuasion to influence you to start buying their products. I record these intros after I've actually reacted to this video, and let me just tell you, there is a lot of psychology going on here, a lot of little marketing persuasion tactics that very actually hard to spot. You can tell it's very, very scripted stuff that Iman Gadzhi does, and he obviously spends a great deal of time planning each video and making sure the bits are in the right places and making sure he says things at specific times. Nothing, as far as I can see in the videos, are by accident. Now, somebody has actually sent me a specific video of Iman's to react to, so that's exactly what I've done, so let's check it out. I've just been checking him out on his socials. He's got the, I assume this is like Dubai, the watch collection, people opening doors for you, Rolls Royce. Damn, this guy's got money coming out of his eyeballs. Let's check the video out. So this is the video that somebody has sent to me today to react to. 7 principles for teenagers to become millionaires. Sounds interesting. 4.1 million views. That's a lot of views. Let's check it out.
You are young.
I'm 17 years old.
You're ambitious.
I worked my face off.
And you want to make it big early in your life.
Wow, straight away, a few things going on there. You are young, you are ambitious, and you want to make it big in your life. These are the words he says, and he's describing his audience's position right there, so they resonate with it. But not only that, he's also got the images of him when he was younger and he was on the come up, right? So it's crafting this story of believability for what the viewer can likely experience by following this advice.
In today's video, I'm going to reveal the 7 principles for teenagers and people in their early 20s to become millionaires. Now, I made my first $1 million at 18 years old, and no matter what you see on TikTok, I want you to know that that is not normal.
And straight in with that open loop afterwards, where he's talking about these are the 7 things that you should do to become a millionaire. Big hook there. And also the open loop is now opened, meaning that you need to stay to the end of this list to make sure you know all of the principles to become a millionaire.
It is not normal in any shape, form, or fashion, but it is because I followed these 7 principles. So what I'm going to reveal to you today not only helped me make my first $1 million at 18 years old, it has helped me to amass a net worth of tens of millions of dollars.
I'm quite glad straight away that he's called out that it's not a normal experience. We can see that he's went on to establish his authority and credibility straight away by saying it's not only $1 million, but it's allowed me to amass tens of millions of dollars by these 7 principles. But he did give a bit of a disclaimer there saying, look, this isn't the typical path. If we look on Wikipedia here, we can see the percentage of people in a certain country who are millionaires. In the US, we've got 9.7%, which is quite high. In the United Kingdom, it's 5.4%. Now, it's important to note as well that your parents' have been taken into consideration there. So house prices and inflations over time have contributed to a huge amount to the number of actual millionaires there. It doesn't necessarily mean they've got $1 million cash in the bank, but it might mean that they've got a pension alongside shares and savings that they're now 70 years old and they put them into their shares when they were 20 years old. They've been sitting on a house which they bought for 60 grand in the friggin' 80s or whatever, and now it's, you know, worth 400 grand or whatever. This classes people as millionaires as well. So in terms of the context of millionaire that I think he's talking about when he's saying it's incredibly rare is actually having the cash in the bank, the liquid cash, so that you can go and spend it whenever you want.
But I do want to make it clear that no matter what anyone says, I will hold my hand up and say that a very large portion of why I'm in the position I am today is because of luck or the grace of God, in my opinion, and timing.
So if you look what he did there, he did something that was very, very clever. And it was basically get you to like him a little bit more. So politicians and celebrities and any type of big brands all know that people tend to buy from them and believe them if they are a likable figure. So what they'll do is they will craft PR campaigns which shows them giving to charity, or, you know, it'll show like a celebrity being very humble or going to a hospital to meet somebody ill. So what did Iman do there? He says, look, I'm a millionaire, but it's all down to luck and timing. It's not really just down to me, right? Showing a humble side of himself. And if you look through his social media, he's a master at managing public perception of him. We have the charity work, which he constantly talks about.
I'm running, but can't run away.
doing this because we just want to have that check to say we give it. For us, it's important to actually be a part of a real organization, to see, like, we physically, tangibly can see the impact it's having. And yeah, I just want to say I'm very, very grateful for all of you guys.
And we can also see as well that he uses bot comments and AI comments and fake engagement to give himself an even better image. Can we see them in the comment section just on this very video? Let's take a look. As a Nepali, I can confirm Iman has done and cares for the kids more than the government. As a Nepali, knowing about their political instability. As a Nepali refugee. As an Indian. As a Nepalese. As a Nepali. As a Nepali. As an Indian. Just a load of comments on the first page, all starting with exactly the same words.
Now, real quick before we get into today's video, I've had tons of people over the years ask me to do like Q&As on Instagram or even here on YouTube.
I have tons of people asking me to do Q&As there, so he's social proofing himself even more, which is establishing his authority. Guys, we're not even a minute into this video yet, and he's already done all these little techniques to try and influence you, to get you to like him, to establish himself as an authority. He's opened a loop, right? He's established himself with this credibility. He's effectively PR managed. It's very impressive, to be honest with you.
Particular question. And I'll be honest, my main Instagram is just a stupid place where I post photo dumps from trips, business trips, what's going on in my life, stuff like that. But
are you watching this little casual flick through his Instagram photos, which are showing you parts of his lifestyle, but really adding no value to the video? There's a reason for it, right? We've got him sat there in a private jet. We've got him surrounded by women. You got him with a luxury car outside. I think he had the Porsche there. These are all little credibility triggers that he's using directly to make sure you're influenced.
the first principle you need to learn if you want to be a millionaire in your teens or your early 20s is that in order to be a king, you must first be a pawn. And this is really the issue with this generation. And I say this generation, even though I am included in it, I still sit across the table from people that, I'm gonna be very honest with you, are far less successful than I am, but I shut the fuck up and I listen. Because for me, in my culture, you listen to your elders. There is nobility in starting from the bottom of the pecking order, being quiet, respecting the process, and understanding that you will eventually work your way up the totem pole.
So some very subtle things going on in that first principle there. First of all, he's established himself as the king there as an authority credibility marker. He has said that, you know, look, I've even sat at the table with people who are significantly older than me, but I've got to be honest with you, I'm significantly more rich than them, significantly more well off. Once again, demonstrating his authority. I do agree with the general message there. Like, you have to sometimes get that experience. You have to be patient. I say all the time to people, like, the best thing you could do when you're thinking of starting a business is work for an established place that's going to teach you the core skills of marketing and sales in an environment where it's actually successful, right? Rather than you trying to figure it out on your own.
Principle for teenagers to become millionaires is dress to elevate. And here's what I mean by that. When you are young, people are gonna automatically discredit you. You don't wanna make it worse by the way that you dress. So here's the thing, you can have a 30-year-old that dresses in big labels, Gucci, Balenciaga, wears the funny shoes and all that stuff. If I'm going to an important meeting, I can guarantee you I'm not dressed like that. So the point is, don't spend crazy amounts of money to have all these labels and this and that, and I don't think that's a good idea ever.
What he's saying is quite true, to be honest with you. People make snap judgments on the type of person you are, usually within a few seconds of actually meeting you before you've even opened your mouth. If you're turning up there all scruffy to a meeting, or, you know, you've got some sort of staff party where you can mingle with some other people as well, if you're turning up there all scruffy, they're probably going to think to themselves that you might be a bit low status, you probably don't really care about meeting people, and they get all these first impressions. I do agree with him on that you should dress a little bit smarter than what you would typically dress. And it's particularly an important message for people who are, you know, in teenage years, where they tend to wear jogging pants and think that's okay, and wearing a Slipknot t-shirt to a friggin' celebration, right? Just don't do that.
Millionaires is have something external that humbles you. And here's what I mean by that. There's a lot of people who are young with a lot of ambition in their life, but the issue is there's nothing in their life that has humbled them. Things that will humble you. Combat sports.
For teenagers, I would 100% recommend combat sports. I did karate and freestyle kickboxing when I was a young kid, and when I was a teenager, I moved into boxing, and then I did MMA, like bits of submission wrestling, things like that. And then I did Muay Thai as I got a bit older. And there is nothing more humbling than being skilled in one of those different things and then going over to something else, such as like jiu-jitsu or submission wrestling, and getting turned into a pretzel by a person who's, 15 pounds lighter than you and 3 years younger than you. Very, very humbling experience, but I recommend everyone tries it out. It also helps you maintain composure in confrontational situations. And in business, you're going to get confrontational situations in life as well. Before I started business, in my early 20s, I was a manager in nightlife, and some situations there would have went pretty badly if I hadn't have been composed with the training that I previously got.
Business will humble you because no matter how good you are, when you get in the world of business, the market will tell you how good you are. Because the thing is, especially if you earn a lot of success at a young age, you're gonna start to think you're hot shit. And if you don't have anything to humble you, you will end up becoming your worst enemy.
It's kind of a funny point, and it's kind of a funny point because I'm watching Iman's content. I've had a quick scan through his channel before I come to this video, and over the years I've seen bits and bobs from him. This dude doesn't come off as a humble dude at all, right? He's only 23 years old in this, maybe. He's on social media bragging about the level of wealth he has, the level of power and influence he has, and we're going to go into why individuals might do that in a little bit. Dude is a brag machine. I've got this fast car. I bought a limited edition Maybach. I spent $592,000 on cars in 1 week. This is my insane watch collection. I'm buying a jet. I bought a supercar. Surprising my mum with a $4 million dream house. Brag machine. This dude might have even invented bragging, but I will show you an entrepreneur that is actually humble. This on the right here is Derek from More Plates, More Dates, and he runs a few different businesses, a few different e-commerce stores where he's selling his own supplements. He's also got a testosterone clinic as well, set up in the US, I believe, and he's interviewing Alex Hormozi on this. Now, Alex Hormozi is also, I think, a good entrepreneur, and he starts every single video by letting you know he has done $100 million in business and he has nothing to sell you. You've seen it, right? But Derek is an example of a very, very humble entrepreneur. And here's why. In this interview right here, and I recommend you go and watch it, it's a brilliant interview. He is sitting Alex Hormozi down and he's basically trying to get as much knowledge from Alex as possible, right?
To APG, which is American Pacific Group out of San Francisco.
So the Allen automation, like not working on leads, how do you use the software to automate that process or to maximize the leads, so to speak?
So you can see here, Derek is using this podcast as an opportunity to get more knowledge out of Alex, right? And then it came out a little while later that Derek himself actually does $100 million with his companies, but he never mentions it, right? Now, that is the definition of being humble. Everyone just thinks this guy is sat in his home, just recording YouTube videos, and he's got a little few side businesses going on, and he is humble enough to sit down here with Alex and quiz him on all these different strategies that he's going, hoping that he can gain some knowledge, when Derek himself actually probably earns more than Alex in this video, because Alex takes equity out of different businesses to grow them, right, and then counts the revenue of those businesses because he's now an owner as part of his overall net worth, whereas Derek has his own stuff. And what's interesting is we're in this time at the moment where so many influencers, so many of these figures online, they're desperate to tell you how much they're worth, what they're spending their money on, to let you know just how much wealth, status they have. What you start to realize when you get a little bit older and you've done business for a little while and you've made a little bit of money, you start to understand that people knowing how much you make is not a good idea. Because what happens is, in psychology, is that as long as people know you're worth a little bit of something, you have the authority, the credibility. They like you a little bit more because you have a little bit higher status. So maybe letting people know that you've got a few million is okay, right? Then at some point, as soon as you cross a certain boundary, letting people know that you have excessive wealth, it goes from the authority bias, the credibility bias, where people respect you, to suddenly the envy bias, where people actually really, you rub them the wrong way. You now have excessive wealth and it triggers them a little bit and they're getting angry at you. And then suddenly all these lawsuits come. Guys, I've seen this again and again and again with different people. They brag about their wealth and then suddenly they're getting sued. and then suddenly the lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit come. And you can see there's a level of being naive where people are so desperate in this make money online space to let you know exactly what they're worth and what credibility they have and how much money they've got, and hopes that makes them more money, that they forget that it becomes a problem down the line. You know, as you've seen probably in some of the red pill spaces at the moment, or those podcasts where, you know, there's a bunch of guys interviewing a bunch of women, and the guys are all criticizing the women who are doing the OnlyFans because they're like, listen, you know, you're not seeing the consequences of what you're doing, and you will do in 10 years when you've got a family, you've got kids, and then there's images and videos of you all over the internet. You know, it's going to be bad for you. But the same thing is true for the guys as well, the guys who are overselling it when they're talking about their wealth and the amount of money they have, because in 10 years time, right, when there's a whole bunch of people know how much money they've got, they've suddenly become a target for things. And by the way, guys, I'm referring to Iman here, not Alex Hormozi. When Alex Hormozi does that catchy little hook at the start of the videos where he tells you he makes $100 million a year, he actually immediately pivots off it and then never really talks about money again. Doesn't brag about it, doesn't show like a wealthy lifestyle. I would bet he knows this principle as well because he understands how human nature can be.
The next principle you need to follow is no casual dating. Either something serious or nothing at all. Listen, if you are in your teenage years or your early 20s, either you go for something serious, no casual dates, no casual flings, stuff like that. Listen, you are a man in your early years. Make something of yourself and either have a partner early on that will support you through that as something serious, or none of this casual Hinge, Tinder, blah, blah, all this bullshit. And the other thing is we live in a very brutal dating culture. I'm gonna be very honest with you. So why be 19 trying to navigate this crazy difficult dating culture where there's successful men all around the world that through Instagram and all of these other mediums have access to all these women? Why would you at 19 try to compete with that? Either you have that serious girl that holds it down for you, or don't try to casual date. I said to myself, what's the point of me really focusing on women and having fun and enjoying myself with all these women when girls don't want guys who are 19 or 20? And you need to understand this. As a guy, you become most attractive once you get past the age of 25. Really from 25 to 35 is when you're most attractive to women. And it really only starts at 25.
This advice that I hear repeated again and again and again is the most nonsense advice. The saying, like, because of social media these days, there is basically so much higher level competition. Women can go on Instagram and they can connect with Drake or whatnot, right? That is the advice which gets given around. And until you've established yourself as a successful guy who's between 20 to 35 years old, you might as well not even bother competing or trying to play the game of dating. That is like the subtext of what's being said there. And this nonsense gets repeated again and again and again. And it comes from cherry-picked evolutionary psychology studies, which then the red pill community have picked up on. And then they've parroted, right? And then Fresh and Fit have got it, right? And then Andrew Tate's got it from there. And then Iman Gadzhi's heard what Andrew Tate said, who's paraphrasing what, you know, the red pill world has said. And then it keeps going along this line. It's like Chinese whispers, right? And saying to guys that you shouldn't even bother competing unless you can get your day one girl is ridiculous. You should be doing both. Developing your social skills and dating skills is one of the most important things that you can be doing in your teen years and your 20 years old. I know guys who have followed this path of becoming a high value man and who have, got into their 30s and they've multi-millionaires now, right? They can't get a frigging girlfriend because they've not worked on their chat, their charisma, their social status, right? They've not worked on any of these things. And they've just focused on becoming a it's the most nonsense advice. If you look at the evolutionary psychology studies of what women find attractive versus what men find attractive, and what men find attractive, it's usually like beauty, youthfulness, a certain waist to hip ratio on women. What women find attractive, it could be how much money you have, how much status you have, but it's also how much charisma you have, how much drive you have. That's important, right? Like how much actual drive you have is often more important than how much wealth you've got, because it's kind of like a girl makes an investment in a guy because she thinks, you know what, maybe this guy doesn't have wealth or anything, but he's pretty driven. I'm pretty sure that he could be a top producer, right? And guys, this isn't just my opinion. This is a famous evolutionary psychology study by Dr. David Buss, who's a world-renowned evolutionary psychologist who studied ambition and industriousness across 37 different cultures. And this is what it says. In 36 of the 37 samples, the predicted sex difference emerged: female valued good financial prospect in a potential mate more highly than males did. The predicted sex differences in preferences for mates with good earning potential was found across widely varying cultures, typically at a high level of statistical significance. In no sample was ambition industriousness rated low. Industrious means how hard working you are, how driven you are, and ambition obviously means like what you want out of life. So you don't have to be at the finish line as a super high status guy with lots of money to actually do well in this area. You just have to be trying to go somewhere. I'm certain because you're watching content like this, you've got some sort of curiosity in you, some sort of craving for knowledge about how the world works. So I would say that you're doing the right thing and you're on the right path. There's like so many different things that goes into it, and then it gets changed into this damaging narrative, which is very, very damaging for young men to listen to, right? Where it's like, you might as well not even bother competing until you've established yourself in society. So don't listen to these guys. Take opportunities to build up your charisma while you're in your 20s. Don't even think about like, oh, I'm just going to wait until I'm in my 30s, I'm going to lock myself away, because you can have no social skills. You're going to have missed a bunch of opportunities, and even when day one girl does come around, you won't even know how to chat to her.
And by the way, that day one girl, listen, please take this coming from me. There is nothing on earth that is more valuable than that. If you've got a day one girl and you manage to get a day one girl, you know, all these girls on a yacht, private jet, blah, blah, I have done and still do all these things. But I understand that that does not come remotely close to a day one.
I love how he's continued with this narrative of like, if you're a guy, you shouldn't do this, but he can't help but also brag in that scenario as well and say things like, yeah, well, I've been on a jet and a private yacht and I've done all these things. So he can't help but like establish his authority in there, even though he's telling you not to do these things. It's brilliant. You can't write this stuff. Such a contradiction.
And this is very, very important, because becoming successful and making your first million in your teens or your early 20s, that's great. Congratulations. Can you keep it now? And not only can you keep it, can you multiply it? Because that's a lot of pressure. Listen, if you make your first $1 million when you're 8, you're 20, or you're, even 23, that's great, but that's a lot of pressure.
This may be one of the most important points in the video. Now you've earned the money, can you actually keep it? Most people think that earning the money is the tough part. It's actually keeping the money. I know someone who their company just 2 years ago was doing hundreds of millions of dollars. Earlier last year, they went bankrupt. Hundreds of millions of dollars to debt, right? To nothing. These things can happen quickly if you make the wrong decisions. And also, it doesn't matter really how much money you earn, you're still not invincible. Mike Tyson in the 80s made 300 million, I think. He roughly peaked at around 300 million with his boxing career. And he spent it all in 2 years. 300 million in the 80s in like 2 years. Crazy, right? So keeping the money is very, very important. This might be the most important thing that Iman has actually said out of this video so far, and he's absolutely right on it.
And when you're 23, you're 25, you get to an age where people can kind of believe this has happened a little bit more. Maybe, you're 22, but you dress the part and people think you're a little older. Because when you get out of your supercar, people will actually think that you bought that. But when you're 19 and you look young, people will either think you got lucky, they're gonna think you invested in some pump and dump coin, or they're gonna think daddy's money.
This right here was very, very clever. This was objection handling. So there are lots and lots of rumors about Iman. And what he did right there was subtly address them. There's rumors that he grew up very rich. There's rumors that his company financials, if you look into them, don't quite make sense with what he was saying at the time. And, I'm not going to get into it on this video, but it was very, very clever what he did there, because people by now, because he's such a big name, will likely have heard about these rumors about him, which could almost discredit him in a little way. So what he's done is he said basically like, it's part of the journey that when you're younger, people are just gonna discredit you. They're not gonna think that you're very smart, and like it's very normal until you reach a certain age, and then people start to respect you a little bit more. Very, very subtle objection handling that he did there. So we talked about a lot of psychology that he's doing in the videos, but I just want to make it clear the main bit of psychology that he's using in all this is he is incentivizing the audience with massive displays of wealth. We could just see from all these videos here, they're all about money. And there's a reason for that, because it paints the picture in the heads of the audience that this is somebody to listen to, and also shows that he knows what he's talking about, and he's incentivizing them that if you follow my advice, you can potentially, become like this as well. And there's a lot of psychology why he's doing this to the audience and why it works on the audience. And there's also a bit of psychology around, is he doing this for himself as well? Is he potentially exaggerating some of this stuff? He certainly looks like he lives, a very luxury lifestyle, but is he just kind of playing it up and dialing it up to 100 with the cameras there? You can see this display of wealth, of power, of status, and it's done in a very, very deliberate manner. It's done in a manner because to guys, that is very, very important to us according to evolutionary psychology. Getting wealth, getting money would give us access to more mates, according to the studies that have been done in any sort of evolutionary psychology texts. So if you look at like what women are generally drawn to, they're drawn to, leaders of men, intelligent men who have the ability to acquire resources, who can provide so that their offspring can be looked after. These men also need to have some form of social status as well, so they have a network which can protect them. And so having the power, the status, the money actually gives you access to more mates, according to the evolutionary psychology. And so displays of that actually works very, very well on a male audience, because guys look at it and they're like, well, if that guy has got that stuff, that's also kind of what I want as well. So I'm going to watch him because hopefully I'm going to get that right advice from him. Quite effective. The important thing is as well, like the target audience that he has, which is about 18 to 25, this tactic is more effective on those guys, because when you have entered the real world and you've started to earn money, you have probably started to actually understand the gravity of what money can get you. Up until the age of 18, you've probably had things bought for you by your parents. And then after the age of 18, you started to realize, like, what happens if my car was a bit nicer, right? What would that do for me and my social status? Would people respect me a little bit more? What happens if I could, just go away on holiday to wherever I wanted to go, and then I could post that on Instagram? And so they think to themselves, well, I'm going to follow this person's advice. And it's a big, big incentive. Then after you've sort of hit 25, you've become a little bit used to the world. Going into your late 20s, you have probably been a little bit jaded by life, started to understand that there's other important things apart from money as well. Maybe you already found a mate, settled down and had a few kids of your own, and then started to realize, like, money to you, power, status, it isn't that important. Also as well, you probably, by the point you've reached 30, already spent money in certain areas and regretted it afterwards. You've not necessarily been scammed, you might have been scammed, but you might have already spent money in certain areas and then thought, that was a bit of a waste of money. I know I certainly had by that point, which means that I'm way more skeptical when it comes to buying programs, buying information. The world is filled with information and knowledge, but most of it is useless, and the stuff that is useful, it's not even applicable to me, right? So I'm very, very skeptical. I understand the importance of my time. I understand the importance of spending my money in the wrong areas as well. So I'm nowhere near as naive as I was between 18 to 25. So I'm just explaining the reason that he is targeting that audience and why he's marketing like that. It's a very, very smart strategy. And let's look at this from Iman's perspective as well. Yes, he's doing these things, showing this wealth, showing this excess social status to make sure that he's marketing to, this group of guys who will then go on to buy his course. But potentially as well, he's also doing this to elevate his own social status. It's quite well studied that men have a tendency to exaggerate the level of wealth they have, status they have, even rounding up on their height when they're asked about their height. And they do all of this in order to actually give themselves more mating options. This isn't my opinion. this is actually quite well studied in research. We've got this study here by Roney in 2003, and it says the effects of visual exposure to the opposite sex, cognitive aspects of mate attraction in human males. And what it says is this research is an investigation into the cognitive aspects of mate attraction in human males. 2 experiments demonstrate that visual exposure to women in person or within photographs can prime large changes in the attitudes, mood state, and personality trait descriptions of male participants. These changes, furthermore, are such that participants show greater conformity to female mate preferences as described in the extant literature. In particular, men exposed to potential mates reported higher variations of material wealth, greater momentary feelings of ambition, higher valuations of other indicators of social status, and personality trait descriptions indicative of high surgency extroversion. All such effects occur without participants' awareness that their responses had been affected by the experimental manipulations. So what does this mean? This means that men have this tendency to exaggerate what they are capable of. They exaggerate their wealth, they exaggerate their social status, they exaggerate their height, right? They round up, they exaggerate how ambitious they are, and they exaggerate their extroversion or surgency as well. Surgency basically means like how high energy they are. They come out their shell a little bit when, a woman's around or when there's a potential woman around. And when you put that into context of social media, all these gurus, I've covered a lot of gurus on social media recently, people like Andrew Tate, people like, Iman Gadzhi, they're doing all these big shows of wealth, of showing how capable they are. And they even explicitly say it as well. According to psychology research, they probably aren't even aware that they're doing this, because when these guys in the experiment were told, like, you've exaggerated some of this stuff according to what's actually real in your life, the guys are like, have I? Right? They weren't aware that they were doing that. Secondly, as well, they're doing it to elevate their own social status. It's not just about selling to you as well. It's about putting them in a better position to, be more respected in society, to get more access to mates, to be more of an authority, to be more respected and credible, right? These are important notes. So next time you're buying from an influencer or you're following an influencer's advice and they're telling you exactly what they're capable of and showing this highlight reel, this Instagram highlight reel of all these things they've achieved, just remember that according to psychological research, men in particular have this tendency to exaggerate what they are capable of, right? And remember that their life may be not really like that. They may not be quite as capable as they're making out they are. Definitely trying to sell to you as well by, showing you the things that you want to hear, but also as well, getting a kick out of this because they're incentivized to show their status, show their money as well. It's very, very interesting research. So that's my thoughts on Iman there. He's obviously a master level marketer. Each part of his video is very, very highly crafted. It's deliberately done and very, very planned. And that's not to take away from him. It still works, the message he's trying to give across. But it's very different from Andrew Tate, who I've made a video on before. Andrew Tate seems to be able to do things on the fly. He's highly persuasive, and he seems to just be able to come up with these insane scripts just off the top of his head on the spot. So very, very different marketer than Andrew Tate, but he's kind of also going for the same thing. Now this brings me to the next point. Iman's main thing seems to be inspiring the youth through incentivizing them with this big display of wealth, and status. So they will potentially buy his course because they see him as an authority figure. And then, they also are inspired by everything that he's got as well. Now, this is a very, very effective tactic, and that in itself isn't that manipulative, to be honest with you. School systems, colleges, universities could probably learn a little bit from that in terms of like the power of incentives and what young people actually want. If they get into the minds of young people and actually start working out like, well, what actually motivates you? What gets you moving forward? Well, if you go on to become a doctor, this is the type of house you have, right? But instead they just kind of drill in education and no one really listens, to be honest with you. So that is arguably a great way to motivate and persuade people and inspire people. Now, some of the things that I don't like that Iman Gadzhi does, he obviously uses bot comments. He's constantly managing his PR. There's a segment in that video where he is showing the charity work that he's doing, and I showed it in this video. But then underneath, he's got all AI and bot comments underneath, basically praising him for the charity work that he's done. And the question in my mind which comes up is like, are you actually bothered about doing the charity work and having this impact which you're saying, or are you more bothered about, you know, the image and the status that's going to get you of being this nice guy, which is kind of clear from the bots in the comment section, all giving you this round of applause for this good deed that you've done, which you've told to do. It's a bit odd, that is. And then you've got the bots on all the other videos as well, which are, you know, changing his perception. This video has inspired me to dive deeper into the topic. This video is a treasure trove of knowledge. Your video has given me a fresh perspective on this. Thank you for the insight. After watching this video, I have felt so lively again after feeling so broken, lifeless, down. When I got the feeling that I was going to have to do a full video on Iman as well, this is really interesting. I remember that I've seen clips of him in the past on certain podcasts, and I know the podcasts names, and I remember the clips because they were very aggressive, the image that he was putting across. He had like aggressive views on things, and I've went on those podcasts and I've tried to find like the full podcast so I can react to them, and I can't find those podcasts anymore, which means that he's obviously asked these podcast hosts to delete them because it goes against the image that he's trying to do. So this is kind of one of the problems I have with this. You've got image management, which I think everyone should do. I don't think you should be saying anything, but then you've got image management to the extent where you're applauding yourself on charity videos. You've got all these comments singing you praises, saying what a good person you are in each of the comment sections. You're getting rid of podcasts, which you've actually done before, which have actually exposed some of the beliefs which you really do have, in the hopes that it hides it. And like, it's a little bit sneaky, to be honest with you. We've got also the constant bragging throughout the video, telling people that they should be humble, which I do think is good advice. You should be humble, but actually not really being humble himself, telling the audience that they should be just focused on climbing and becoming a higher value man, essentially, and then start dating in your late 20s to mid 30s, right? Start dating around then because you'll be a higher value man and you'll be more competitive, while also quickly explaining that he has done this whole route of dating around and all this stuff. And it's kind of like, well, you can't be telling your audience to do that when you didn't do that yourself, and saying that this is the best advice and then kind of bragging that you've done it as well. Like, he seems like a master level marketer. He seems very, very braggy though. And the image manipulation constantly actually puts me off him a little bit. But that's my opinion on it. It'll be interesting to read these comments here. Might even get attacked by bots again. Who knows, depending on whether his PR team pick up on it. But you know what? It's always good to put your opinion out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the next community poll who you want to see next, and take it easy. See you later.